Hi, Super Scientist. It's Miss Doan here from Miss Doan's Science Lab, and today we're going to go over our Super Science Vocab, or SSV. So the words we're going to be looking out for are habitat, environment, ecosystem, population, community, food chain, producer, consumer, decomposer, photosynthesis, and drought. Alright? And a lot of these words you're probably familiar with, but we need to go over them because they're super important. Alright, so I'm going to be reading to y'all. It is a non-fiction book called How Are Living Things Connected to Their Ecosystem. So that's what we're talking about this week, right? Alright, so look at the great blue heron in the water. So there's the great blue heron in the water. Does it have everything it needs? So we know that it needs water. Yes, it has a fish in its mouth so it can eat. It has a habitat to live in, so a place to live in. And yeah, so it does. It has everything it needs. The heron has food and water. It has trees for shelter. So that's what the trees it likes to live in. The heron finds everything it needs in its habitat. Whoa! Stop, collaborate, and listen. We got our first super science vocab word. We got habitat. Habitat, follow along with me if you can, is the space where a plant or animal lives. Alright, yeah, so habitat is the space where a plant or animal lives. Okay? That is important to know. Let's continue. What things surround the heron? Water, soil, plants, and other animals are some things. These are all parts of its environment. Oh, there we go. Stop, collaborate, and listen. We got our next one, environment. An environment is all, and I'm going to underline all, the living and non-living things that surround, I'm going to underline surround as well, and affect. So they have to also affect a living thing. Alright, so an environment is all. It's not just some of it. It has to contain all of the living and non-living things that surround and affect a living thing. Alright, so we're more focused on what's affecting living things as opposed to non-living, how something affects non-living things, because really, for the most part, non-living things aren't really affected by their environment. For the most part. There's certain exceptions. Alright, so let's continue. How are living things organized in an ecosystem? That's the next subtitle. Think about the great blue heron. The heron lives in a swamp with other organisms or living things. An ecosystem, stop, collaborate, and listen. An ecosystem is a group of living things and the environment in which they live. Alright, and I know, guys, I'm probably going fast. No, actually, I'm going faster than I would normally do in a classroom. So, but the beauty of video is that you can pause and catch up, and then when you're ready, you can unpause it and continue along with me. So, there's no need for anyone to be like, Miss Stone, slow down, because you have control of that situation, which is kind of cool. Alright. Ecosystems can be grouped into populations and communities. So that right there is telling my brain that, okay, so populations and communities are kind of like ingredients to, or parts that make up of an ecosystem. So if I were to draw something, ecosystems would be bigger than populations and communities. All right, but we're going to learn more about that. Do you think one great blue heron or several live in the swamp? Most likely there are others. All of the great blue herons living in the swamp make up a population. Oops, stop, collaborate, and listen. A population is all of one of a kind of living thing in the same ecosystem. All right. So, a population is all of just one kind of living thing in the ecosystem, same ecosystem. All right, so like for example, the blue heron. There might be blue herons in other parts of the world, but if you're going to be just looking at one ecosystem, you're only including those blue herons in that one location, all right, or in that one ecosystem. Now, let's say you have blue herons, and then I'm trying to think. I can't think of it right now, but I know there's like other birds that typically live in swamp environments, but they wouldn't be considered in the same population because those are two different kinds of birds. Now, right now, we're just focusing on one organism, one living thing, which in the population, that example was the blue heron. All right? So, think about the swamp where the great blue heron lives. Populations of painted turtles and water lilies live there. Populations of cypress trees and sunfish live there too. All of the populations that live in the same ecosystem make up a community. All right, we're going to stop, collaborate, and listen. Now, I'm going to tell you right now that the following sentence doesn't give us the definition of community. So if the following sentence doesn't give us the definition, then where do you think we should be finding? It's given us it, but it's not after it. So we're going to look. That's right, before. So we're going to reread that sentence. All of the populations that live in the same ecosystem make up a community. All right, so my definition for community is all of the populations that live in the same ecosystem. All right, so our smallest part of our ecosystem is our organism. And then within that, so the same kind of organism makes up a population, and then a community is multiple populations in the same area, needing the same non-living things as well as other living things that they need. Okay, so think of it like your family. So, I'm trying to think. In my family, so let's say I am the initial organism, right? And so I'm a human, whatever. Then the rest of my family, so I have like a sister and I have my parents, and then I also I technically have like brother-in-law and stuff like that, but from just looking at my immediate family, it's just myself, my sister, and my parents. All right, that would be our population. In our habitat, if we were all still living in the same place, we're not anymore, obviously, but if we were to still live in the same place, then that would mean that our home is our habitat, right? And then our community is like our neighborhood. So like suburban neighborhoods, they make up of a bunch of different houses that house different families or groups of people that live together in some cases. Excuse me. Allergies. All right, so I'm just over explaining that, but basically you have your organism, then you branch out to your population, and then you branch out further into your community. You can think of an ecosystem as a community of living things and the non-living parts of their environment. The non-living parts can play very important roles. For example, the swamp ecosystem would not exist without water. Animals drink the water. Some live in it. Trees also grow in the water. An ecosystem is more than just a community of living things. So they interact with each other, right? There are many different ecosystems, such as wetlands, deserts, forests, and grasslands. Wetlands are covered by water much of the time. In a wetland, you see water plants and trees that grow in water. Many animals, such as fish, turtles, and birds, live in the wetlands. A swamp is a one-of-the-kind wetland. How is a desert different from a wetland? It is dry. Some deserts are cold. Others are very warm. In a warm desert, you find plants such as cactus. You also find animals such as mice, rattlesnakes, foxes, and owls. All right, a rainforest is different from a desert. It is wet. A rainforest has many trees and other plants. You find toucans and jaguars in a rainforest. It's a tricky word. A temperate forest has warm summers and cold winters. You find animals such as squirrels and bears. Temperate forests also have oak trees and other kinds of trees. Some ecosystems are in water. Rivers and oceans are water ecosystems or aquatic ecosystems. All right? Aquatic, water, same thing. In a river ecosystem, you might see otters, fish, and turtles. In an ocean, you could find whales, fish, and shellfish. The animals in water ecosystems have bodies that help them live in water. For example, fish have gills. The gills help them get oxygen from water. So, here's those clownfish and that fox. They live in different ecosystems. All right. Actually, I don't want to move on to the remainder of our super science vocab because that's going to be more so on what we will be covering in future weeks. All right, it has to do with food chains and food webs. All right, but thank you for joining me on this science adventure. My next video will be where I do a model of a terrarium because I was, and practicing social distancing, I didn't have the supplies I needed to actually make a terrarium. So I felt that it was better in the health of myself and the health of others if I decided to just stay home and make do with objects that could represent, what an actual terrarium needs. All right? So, until next time, so long, farewell to you, my friend. Goodbye for now. Until we meet again, I say so long, farewell to you, my friend. Goodbye for now. Until we meet again. Ya ba 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 ba. Bye, guys.